So it's also a great pleasure for me to have a study session, because this is a study session under the aegis of Cardinal Rich, with Rabbi Sandmel, who I know very well, with so many specialists and also non-specialists. I think sometimes the questions asked by non-specialists are what help us move forward the quickest and the best. At least this is part of Jewish tradition, to know that questions are one of the most important part of a study. As Rabbi Sandmel, I will only focus on Nostra Aetate 4, the section on the relationship to Judaism. And even before I start, I would like to say something. The Nostra Aetate is the shortest document of the Second Vatican Council. I think I'm not mistaken. It's at least one of the shortest, if not the shortest, but it has a huge impact. A Jew or a Christian who lived 100 years ago and came back into this room would not imagine what was happening. It would have been completely unimaginable to have us here discussing, to have, well, already the ambassador of Israel would have not existed, and to be on the same row as cardinals, as a cardinal, as bishops, in the middle of clergies, theologians, and with members of the Jewish community. This is unimaginable. And I think we need to realize that if in a certain way God acts through history, the fruit of Nostra Aetate is a sign of the truth of Nostra Aetate. The implications, the way Nostra Aetate has really changed the church, her relationship with the Jewish people, and affected the Jewish people, is a sign of its truth, of its deep truth. But I was supposed to speak about discerning the past and dreaming. So my paper will revolve around these two themes. I will end up with the dreams, but start with a little story. You know, Shlomo went to see his rabbi, and he said, Rabbi, I dreamt that I was in charge of a company with 300 employees. And the rabbi said, so Shlomo says, what do I do, Rabbi? And the rabbi says, well, go back, and when 300 people dream that you are their boss, come back to me. But we will start dreaming before having all that. But first of all, discerning the past, which means discerning means judging the past and trying to find what was just, and I will start by this, and what was just and good, but needed to be more precise and needed to be worked on. With 3 steps. The first step is the rejection of the sweeping statements on Jews being responsible for the death of Jesus. The second aspect, rejecting the fact that the Jews are an accursed people. And here we will need to go a bit further than only reject. And then understanding the image of the root, the Jewish people being the root that nourishes the church, which means actually a deep theological understanding of the relationship between the Jewish people and the church. When I say rejecting the teaching, one has to be very precise about what we mean by teaching. The church, in her general day-to-day teaching, as a theologumenon, which means as an opinion, has said that the Jewish people are responsible for the death of Jesus, and that they are as a whole. The church has never said this at a dogmatic level, has never stated this dogmatically. So when I say teaching, I am not speaking about doctrine or dogma. I'm speaking about a theologumena, a general theological opinion. And I think, I'm going to be very Catholic right now. I think that the Catholic Church has been protected by divine grace, and this is part of her charism of infallibility. Sorry, I'm being very Catholic, but it's part of her charism of infallibility that she has been protected from not taking these statements or making these statements dogmatic. But they've been very often spread, and they've had a huge effect. And as Jules Isaac very well said, they have laid like the earth for the poisonous plant of anti-Semitism. Now, what the Second Vatican Council, what Nostra Aetate says is, I'm quoting, "The Jewish authorities and those who followed their lead pressed for the death of Christ," John 19:6. "Still, what happened in his passion cannot be charged against all the Jews without distinction, then alive, nor against the Jews of today." It's worth commenting a bit. There is a responsibility. There is even a great responsibility of the Jewish leaders in the death of Jesus. Not all Jewish leaders, because there was Nicodemus and Joseph of Arimathea, for example, who were hidden disciples. But there is a responsibility. However, one needs to note, and Jules Isaac was very clear on this, that a huge number of Jews ignored the existence of Jesus at the time of Jesus. There were crowds following Jesus, but there were probably more Jews in diaspora at that time as in the land of Israel, and what we can call the land of Israel. And anyhow, many ignored the existence of this person. And other aspect, there were other actors. Hans Urs von Balthasar says that there were basically three types of actors. There were Jews, there were the Romans, and the Romans are the one who effectively killed Jesus. They need to take this responsibility. And there was Judas, one of the first disciples, an apostle. And Balthasar interestingly says, this is a symbol of the whole of humanity. Jews, pagans, and the church herself. Which theologically has a real meaning because Christ died for Jews, pagans, and the church. And it's normal that all three be part of the sin that brought him to death. In the same way, I stress, it's not a responsibility that is carried on generation after generation. And here, this is also a general idea that we need to work on is, to what extent does a people carry the responsibility of some of its members? And it's a sensitive question because there are relationships, there are responsibilities, but there's also the fact that sin is always something personal and needs a personal choice. But I'd just like to make a quick comment on a text that is often used to say, but the New Testament says, Matthew 27:25, all the people answered, his blood is on us and on our children. You know this text that has been used and used again to make the Jewish people bear the weight of the responsibility of Jesus' death through ages. Now, two ways of seeing this text. We would need, of course, a full exegesis, but just two ways of seeing this text. How many people do you think were gathered in the courtroom? How many people said this? Okay, we don't know. We don't know. But courtrooms at that time were certainly not huge courts. Can we say 50 people? 100 people? If 50 or 100 people went in front of Cardinal Rich's window and said, we will kill you, and may our children bear the responsibility of your death, would this implicate the whole Polish people until the end of times?
I would say God bless you.
We would say God bless you. Certainly not. What authority does a group of 50 or 100 people have to bring a curse upon themselves and their children for ages? And the other thing is, and this is also very Christian theologic, the blood of Christ is the source of salvation. Being covered, receiving the blood of Christ in a strictly Christian theological point of view would mean these are the first to be saved. These are the first to be forgiven. These are the first to be welcomed into forgiveness. So I do believe that it's important to not only say the Council has said that all Jews and all Jews throughout time cannot be made responsible for the death of Jesus, but it's important to explain why, to give a bit more explanation. And this is, as Cardinal Rich said, not only a reform or reformation, but a teshuva, a conversion. The second question that I wanted to deal upon, which is a very important statement, but here I think we can go a bit further, or time has brought us further, and the Church has moved on. The Jewish people are not an accursed people. It's strictly related. I'm quoting Nostra Aetate again. Although the Church is the new people of God, the Jews should not be presented as rejected or accursed by God, as if this followed from the Holy Scriptures. And Nostra Aetate also quotes Romans chapter 9. Theirs, the Jews, is the sonship and the glory and the covenants and the law and the worship and the promises. Theirs are the fathers, and from them is the Christ, according to the flesh. Theirs is the glory. Present tense. Paul is speaking in present tense. I'm going to open a theological parenthesis. He also says theirs is the sonship. While a lot of Christian theology will say we are sons through the Son, but Paul says theirs is already, present tense, the sonship. I'd be ready to discuss this and work a bit more on it, but it's not our theme right now, so if ever in the questions you want to ask a question about that, no problem. But theirs is the glory. And all this is in present tense. I think it's important to be able to read the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, the Tanakh with pure eyes. A great number of the promises say to the Jewish people, saying that they are the loved people of God, that they are close to God's heart, that they are God's treasure, are linked to eternal promises. The promise is said to be eternal. And I'm going to take an exemplary text, is Jeremiah 31:31, about the new covenant. This is the covenant I will make. Okay. The days are coming, declares the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah. It will not be like the covenant I made with their ancestors, whom I took when I took them by the hand to lead them out of Egypt, because they broke my covenant, though I was a husband to them. This is the new covenant. You agree? Most Christians will say the new covenant means the covenant with the church. You agree? What is written? With whom does God make this covenant? I'll read the text again. I will make a new covenant with the people of Israel and with the people of Judah. The new covenant is also with the same people. This is where I think that the Church has gone further since Nostra Aetate, has needed to go further with Nostra Aetate, in the sense that she has also realized that there is nothing in the New Testament that can base the fact that the Jewish people are not God's people anymore. I repeat, there is nothing in the New Testament that can be a base to say that the people of God, the Jewish people, are not the people of God anymore. I'm going just to take one exemplary text. Matthew 21, 33 to 45. It's the parable of the vine, where the master of the vine sends slaves to gather money. The tenants of the vine, I hope the translators are following well. The tenants of the vine sent back the slaves. The master, after a while, sends his son. The tenants of the vine kills the son. And they say that they will keep the vine for themselves. And the master comes, takes the vine, and I quote, and says, the kingdom of God will be taken away from you and given to a people that produces the fruits of the kingdom. This is Matthew 21, 43. Now, to put it in one sentence, then I will explain a bit more. I am certain that this text is not about taking away the kingdom from the Jewish people and giving it to another people, but it is giving new leaders to the Jewish people. Why? Because the vine in the Bible is the image of the Jewish people. If the Jewish people had been given another role, the vine itself would have been destroyed or displaced. But here, the vine is entrusted to others. Then the text is very clearly addressed to Pharisees and to the head priests. In verse 45, it is said that the chief priests and Pharisees knew that Jesus was speaking to them and about them. And third, but this is a part where you really need to work the text, you can't see it from the first reading, the word people here that is used, laos, is sometimes used to speak about an order inside of a society. Like the order of judges, the order of doctors, or the order of priests. You could use order, laos. And it's not impossible, it's probable that here what Jesus means is the order of these leaders, this group of people. The vine will be taken away from this group of people. And this is actually what has happened both in Jewish Christianity and in what became Judaism, rabbinic Judaism, because the apostles were the new leaders, the new Jewish leaders of Jewish Christianity, and the rabbis were the new leaders of what became Judaism or rabbinic Judaism. Am I clear about how this parable works? So, what does all this bring us to? It brings us to 25 years after Nostra Aetate, the resounding declaration by John Paul II, in Mainz in 1980, saying the old covenant was never revoked by God. And this statement has been confirmed by different church documents since then. in the Catechism of the Catholic Church, number 121, and in Evangelii Gaudium by Pope Francis in number 247. Catechism 121, Evangelii Gaudium 247. What this means is the Catholic Church and the Church in general does not replace the Jewish people, or to put it in the other way, the Jewish people remains the people of God. How can we understand this? This is where we need to work a bit more on another aspect of Nostra Aetate. It's the fact that, so this is my third point, inside of the memory, inside of the discernment, before coming to the dreams. The third point is the fact that Nostra Aetate taps into the Pauline image of the olive tree upon which the nations have been grafted, and that remains the root, which nourishes the church. I'm quoting now, "The church draws sustenance from the root of that well-cultivated olive tree onto which have been grafted the wild shoots, the Gentiles." Quote Romans 11:17-24. "Indeed, the church believes that by his cross, Christ our peace, reconciled Jews and Gentiles, making both one in himself." Ephesians 2:14-16. We often say that Judaism is, as a Christian, we often say that Judaism is our root, that Jews are our root. Big question. Roots are the past or the present of a tree? Roots are the present of a tree. And the text very clearly says the roots that nourish the church, present tense. How is it possible for the Catholic Church to say the Jewish people nourishes the tree that is the church, which has huge implications? It means the church exist without the Jewish people, and that it needs to receive this nourishment. And how does it receive this nourishment? I will not be able to answer all these questions, but now is the time. I'd like to try to comment it. I'm sorry for some people here have already heard me say this. I'll try to comment it, commenting the olive tree image. Rabbi David, if you want to see what happens, you should probably move, but so remember Romans 11? Paul has this image of an olive tree. There's the olive tree, which is the people of Israel. There are the nations. You can move to the second slide. And just what Paul says is that basically there are three types of branches. There are the natural branches. There is the grafted branches, which are the nations. And there is what he calls the broken branches, which are very clearly the Jewish people who have not recognized Jesus as Messiah. Okay. Now, let's move to directly to slide 4. Right. The grafted branches are the Gentiles who come to Christ. Now, what's interesting is to see what translations of the Bible you have, or of the New Testament. Most translations will say, the grafted branches were grafted at the place of the natural branches. The Greek says, among the natural branches. En autois. The Greeks, I repeat, the Greek says, the grafted branches, the Gentiles were grafted among the natural branches, which means there are still natural branches, and they are one among many, and they do not replace them. This is the teaching of the letter to the Ephesians that Nostra Aetate also quotes. I'm going to quote the Ephesians. Through the gospel, the Gentiles are heirs together with Israel, members together of one body, sharers together in the promise in Jesus Christ, Ephesians 3:6. The Gentiles are no longer foreigners nor immigrants, but fellow citizens of the saints and members of his household, Ephesians 2:19. Paul, as a Jewish believer in Jesus, says, we were blessed as members of the Jewish people. You Gentiles are now no longer immigrants and foreigners. You are now made part of us. That is what the Messiah brings, is making the Gentiles part of. And there's a beautiful, since in the Catholic Church, lex orandi and lex credendi is an important principle, which means the law of the prayer and the law of belief go together. I'm going to quote from the Easter Vigil, an imploration that is said during the Easter Vigil. Grant, we pray, that the whole world may become children of Abraham and inherit the dignity of Israel's birthright. I'm going to repeat this. Grant, we pray, that the whole world may become children of Abraham and inherit the dignity of Israel's birthright. Gentiles are only but fully grafted, adopted, made adopted members of this olive tree. And grafting, I'm not good at agronomy. So if you, but what I have seen is an apple tree which had red apples, which bore red apples, and a branch bearing yellow apples was grafted onto this apple tree. 30 years later, the yellow branches still gave yellow apples. So, what does this mean? I hope I'm right from an agronomically point. No? I've seen this. I've seen it with my eyes. Maybe I'm wrong. But what I see in this is that a graft means that the branch is fully part of the tree, but that it keeps its difference. And it's interesting to see in Ephesians when Paul says, you are co-members, co-sharers, every time he uses the word syn, which means that there is an integration, but still a differentiation. You are co-responsible. You are responsible, but with us and through us. Even in the eschaton, the Jewish people and the Gentiles that are grafted are distinguished. In the book of Revelations, Revelation 7:4, in front of the throne and the Lamb, there are two bodies. There's a whole people, but they are in two bodies. Firstly, the 144,000 out of every tribe of the people of Israel. And afterwards are quoted the great multitude that no one can count from every nation, from all tribes and peoples and languages. The Gentiles become part of all this through the Jewish people. And this is what the Jewish people's role is. The election is truly an election until the end of times, but so that the Jewish people be a blessing, Genesis 12, and a light in Isaiah 49, 46, 49, a light to the nations, to remind all nations that they as well are called to be elect. There's a very strong theological idea here. For the Catholics among us, I'm going to compare this to ministerial priesthood. Priests in the Catholic Church are set apart, truly, until the end of their lives, but to remind the baptized of their baptism, of their priestly baptism, common baptism. The people of God is set apart, truly, until the end of times, to remind all other peoples that they too are called. And I know that there are other peoples who consider themselves called people. The Polish people does. The French people do. We are here part of called people, but we can do this only because and through we are grafted. That was only the graft. The central branch here, are the natural branches that have welcomed Jesus as Messiah, which is the whole of the early church. Daniel Boyarin says, we often say, why do so many Jews not accept Jesus? The real question is, why did so many Jews accept Jesus and become the first church? Mary, the apostles, all the first disciples for the first generations were Jews. And this is this little central branch that certainly continues throughout history and still exists under the form of people like Edith Stein, Cardinal Lustiger, Alexander Menne. But the graft has become enormous. Positively, we can say it was a fabulous fruitfulness. Negatively, we can say it may have crushed the rest of the branch. And the third branch, the broken natural branches, the Jews who have not welcomed Jesus. Once again, we need to read the Greek. Broken for the Jewish people is eklao. But Paul uses another word when he says, you Gentiles, you may be cut off if you are not faithful. He uses ekopto. Now, what is the difference? Eklao means broken in the sense of a branch that is broken from the tree, but still hanging, like some branches can, through the skin or through some parts of the branch. The other word for the Gentiles, ekopto, means severed, cut. In a certain way, this is my interpretation, it may mean that the Jewish people can never be cut off. They can be hurt, wounded, they have been, they are, but they can never be cut off. And interestingly, the 2,000 past years of history have abundantly proven that this people is certainly not cut off from the sap because of the fantastic production of genius, scientists, artists, great mystics that have come from this people. What are the consequences? Implications for the church. I have, 5 minutes? Yeah, okay. Okay, so I won't be able to dream. Mm-hmm. In that case, I'll try to conclude this in 2 minutes and dream in 3 minutes. This means that the church, as I said, needs the Jewish people as a graft needs the tree. And this is the present-day Jewish people. that the Jewish people, from a Catholic point of view, has a permanent role in the history of salvation, and that the Church needs the Jewish people to be herself and accomplish her mission. All this explains the beautiful first sentences of Nostra Aetate 4, as the Sacred Synod searches into the mystery of the Church, Mysterium Ecclesiae Perscrutans. It remembers the bond that spiritually ties the people of the New Covenant to Abraham's stock. Now, I don't know how a Jew would or should react to this. It's a bit like being part of the dicastery for Christian unity. On one sense, I can imagine and hope there is a bit of honor in being considered so close and recognized as the permanent source of Christianity. On the other hand, I am sure a Jew could very well say, who are you to tell us who we are supposed to be and what we are supposed to do and how important we are? Who are you? And this is probably where we need to continue our discussion, to also have a Jewish take on what an olive tree could work like and what this can work like. Dreaming. The reason why I do want to take my 3 minutes about the dream is because I want to speak about something that is probably difficult to speak about, I was going to speak about 2 dreams. The second dream was how we can learn from each other. And the first dream, and that's the only thing I'll be able to speak about, is can the land of Israel be a common dream? Of course, 3 minutes.
Let it be full.
Your generosity is immense. Excellent, eminency. I just noticed that in one of the many moments in which God promises the land of Israel to the Jewish people for eternity, one of the many moments is a dream of Jacob. Interesting. I am not sure we can at this point really make it a common dream, but my dream is that 60 years after Nostra Aetate, we can at least speak about it in common and understand each other about this. And what I would like to do is try to transform what for some of us has become a nightmare into a place where we can help each other dream. We need to help each other dream. We should not only stay at a theological level when we are speaking about the situation as it's happening right now. Nostra Aetate, as Rabbi David insisted a lot on, also produced relationship, understanding, trust, friendship maybe, in many cases, friendship. And I think we can only speak about the situation in Israel and in the Middle East from the point of view of trust and friendship. We have to start off from this point of view. In a way, what we've been doing so far has been the easy part. We've had 60 years of Jewish-Christian conversation as in a greenhouse. You know what a greenhouse is? The plant is in a greenhouse. Now the plant is outside of the greenhouse. It's in the winds of history. And the question is, can Nostra Aetate weather this test? Can it hold on in this new test? And I would say that there are 2 conditions. One is emotional or relational, and one is theological. Emotionally, we need to feel. Now I'm addressing the Christians specifically. We need to feel with our Jewish partners and not only analyze. We need to feel what it's like to have experienced a pogrom. We need to feel what it's like to have friends of friends or relatives of relatives, or even friends and relatives who are hostage or who were, it's almost past, but it's still present. To understand what it means to be in an existential threat, to understand what's happening with the rise of anti-Semitism, we need to feel. That's the first thing. And we also need to feel the very deep connection that the Jewish people have with their land. I think 90% of Christians cannot understand this. Maybe Poles can understand it a bit better than others. I hope I'm not treading on grounds that I don't, on dangerous waters, but I do feel that when you have a very deep attachment to your people and to your land, you can understand something about someone else's attachment to people and land. I hope. I also think it's very important for Christians to hear Jesus when he says, "Judge not, that you be not judged." Matthew 7:1. Judge not, that you be not judged. This does not mean that we should hold any moral judgment, but it means that all moral judgment should be part of a relationship of trust and friendship beforehand. Once we are friends, we can try to challenge each other, but before, we cannot. It's interesting to see that a few verses later, the gospel continues, "First take the plank out of your own eyes, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye." And Hillel, already quoted, said, "Do not judge others until you have been in their situation." Okay. Now there also is 1 minute eminency, a theological aspect. This was a relational aspect. I think there's a theological aspect, and once again, I will speak more to the Christians than to the Jews here. Can we, in the winds of history, keep on saying what we believe in theologically? The Jewish people are the people of God. I think that we have the same question with the Catholic Church. Seeing the history of the Catholic Church, and as a Catholic bishop, I can say, seeing some of the horrors that have been committed by members or by structures of the Catholic Church, can we say, "I believe in the Church that is one, holy, Catholic, and apostolic"? And we need to have two entry points. One is historical, and one is strictly theological. Historical, it means the truth sets us free. We need to look at the truth and not be afraid of truth. The truth also means being able to see all the good that has been given and brought out in history by the Catholic Church. And we need the same, and on the theological point is, when we say, "I believe in the Church, in the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church," it's not phenomenology. It's not a description. It's an act of faith. And an act of faith is always an act of hope and charity. We are believing the Church, hoping in the Church, and loving the Church. We need the same relationship to the Jewish people. History, the truth will make us free. We need both to see what was really a pogrom, what it means to fight an enemy like Hamas, that there is a true existential threat for the Jewish people and for the state of Israel, that the Catholic Church rightly recognizes the legitimacy of the state of Israel, and we need to insist on this every time we speak about the situation. But we also need to ask, is it really necessary? How come so many children, women, and elderly have died? And on the other hand can we analogously say, "I believe that the Jewish people is the chosen people of God until the end of times, in faith, hope, and charity," and not only as a phenomenological description, but as an act of faith, because it's part of the act of faith in the mystery of the Church. Thank you for your patience.